And we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the stream. Daphne, how are you today?
I could not be better. And yet it gets better every day. That was my twist on what you usually say when I ask you how you're doing. Did you
That's
like that?
awesome. I love it. I love it. Today's podcast topic, this is season 1, episode number 2, or technically episode 28 of the the ultimate choose your own adventure game. And today, Daphne, set us up. What are we talking about?
We're talking about choose yourself, which reminded me if you've ever watched, have you ever watched Parks and Rec?
Did it have Chevy Chase in it in the first season?
I don't think so.
Then
I
no.
don't remember him being in it. It was Amy Poehler though.
I do. Yeah. I may have seen 23 and a half seconds of it.
Okay. Well,
Of
anyway,
one
there's a whole
episode.
scene and there were two of the characters and their big thing is like treat yourself.
Treat yourself. Okay.
Treat yourself is what they really say. Anyway, this is choose yourself. And this episode was born out of a comment you made last week, which said we should just talk about choosing ourselves. I cannot remember the exact context in which it came through. Nevertheless, it is about not feeling as though you need to be anointed by someone to do the thing that you want to do, have the thing you want to have, so on and so forth. Just choose yourself.
Welcome to Life, the ultimate choose-your-own adventure game with hosts Cliff Ravenscraft and Daphne Scott. Join this dynamic duo as they explore the profound concept of life as a thrilling adventure, blending ancient wisdom and modern psychology. Embrace the joy of living with presence, creativity, and playfulness. It's time to navigate the game of life together. Are you ready to play? Let the adventure begin.
Daphne, what stood out to you this time?
Are you ready to play?
Are you ready to play? I love it. For me,
Yeah.
choose your own. Just out of the name of our podcast, when it was saying today is about choosing yourself. It's about choosing your own adventure in life. And we're going to hyper focus on choose your own. Choose your own life, choose your own adventure, make it up, anoint yourself, give yourself permission to be who you want to be.
Yes. Oh, the give permission is so good and so necessary in this conversation. And, well, two things about, the way that we like the games that we're playing. Like this is a game in life, right? So why not choose? You're choosing all the time, what we would say is intentionally or unintentionally, right? Consciously, unconsciously. And there's this, and that's some part of the game too, is understanding more about what lives in our subconscious, our unconscious that we may not be aware of. That's part of the game that we're playing, is to understand more of that, to understand more of our depths as we go through our life. Very fun. And, why not just choose the thing that you want to be doing? And then what gets in the way of that? Now, clearly our beliefs, and that's what we're going to explore today. I mean, like, where do our beliefs about what we're capable of, what we're not capable of, where those fit into the picture? And I think one that you were keying in on last week, Cliff, was just this idea that, and I think you gave the example of somebody that wanted to be a public speaker or something. And just this example that, I have to wait for somebody to invite me to speak.
Yeah, the exact example is that I was talking to somebody. It's like, listen, Cliff. So, like you, I want to become a paid keynote public speaker, and I want to build up my professional speaking and all this other stuff. And I just need to know, how do I get invited to speak at all of these events?
Yeah.
And my immediate response to everyone who asks me that question is, the first thing you need to do is invite yourself. And I actually mean two different things.
Okay.
Because in both pieces of advice are valid. Number one, contact the people who are hosting conferences and invite yourself to speak at their conference.
Yeah. Let them
Make
know
a
you're out there.
Yeah, say, I'm available and I'd like to come speak. And here's the topic. And this is why I think it's relevant. It doesn't matter what your experience has been, choose yourself. All right. And the second one is create your own event. In almost every area here where we live in the United States, there's a library. Most of them have a branch, or at least you can drive a short distance to a branch where there are free meeting spaces that you pay nothing or a very small fee for.
Yeah.
Daphne, Hebron, Kentucky, the Hebron branch of the Boone County Public Library System
I love it.
has a brand new meeting space that can sit 300 attendees. Do you know how much it costs for me to reserve that space for
How
that
much?
room for me to speak in front of an audience of 300 people? $75 per day.
That's crazy.
Yes.
300 people?
300 people,
Wow.
$75 per day. If I had a 2-day conference, 2-day workshop, 300 people, my total investment of the space is $150. That's a lot cheaper than when I was doing Free the Dream conference, by the way. A
Well, you
lot.
might have had more production costs attached.
I may have had a little bit more
You may have
production
had.
cost and
Sure.
also
It was very nice, though.
venue fees. However, what I'm saying though is go invite yourself.
Yeah.
Go to your local hotel, the Holiday Inn, Quality Inn, whatever, and you have a little conference room, 15 people around a conference table. Daphne attended a 1-day business mastermind that I held in August of 2014 in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah, that was Dallas, right? That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
I was
That was so
speaking
fun.
at a conference and I'm like, you know what? I want to host my first live event. And at the time, I'm like, would people pay me $1,000 for a 1-day like mastermind event? And of course, I'm like, who am I to ask people to pay me $1,000 to host a 1-day mastermind event at the time? But
Yeah.
I chose to do it. And then all of a sudden, you were there. Heather Bear was there. I mean, it was we
Mark was
we
there.
filled in the entire room. It was
Mhm.
amazing. I chose myself anyway.
You chose yourself. Well, and I think, we're going to go through 3 lenses on this because I think one of the first things that you just mentioned, which is so important to this whole being able to even choose ourselves, is the imagination part of it.
Hmm.
Right? Like what you just said, like, oh, I wonder, and also I want to mark there was the business side of it, but there was also like this is a group. I think we were all in your podcasting A to Z course, right? Prior to that?
Not everybody was, but I would say probably more than half of them there were podcasters. Of course, it was attached to the very first ever podcast movement conference
That's
in
right. That's right.
2014.
That's
So
right.
it did attract a lot of podcasters, and most people there were from podcasting A to Z.
Yeah, and people that were, going on their own business journey. I mean, it was an amalgam. I think the most important part is there was a community that you thought this would be really great to get this community of people together.
Yeah.
This would be really fun. I wonder if they, and we all were looking to you, obviously, as our trusted advisor. And, I wonder if I could also, they would pay me $1,000 to be in this room together, to spend a day together. So there was this imagining that went on, right? You could see yourself doing this. You could sort of put these pieces together. And I think that's the first part is in this person who came to you for public speaking. It doesn't matter, whatever it is, right? I imagine myself being the next senior vice president of whatever. I imagine myself. It's just that imagination part has to even be there. And I think sometimes we just we sort of get the glimpse of the idea and we shut it down so quickly. And this is where these other 2 pieces fit into it that we'll get to. But we start to shut that imagination down. And in our belief system, we kind of don't even let it go that far. Right? We sort of get this inkling of an idea and we just kill it
Yeah.
right out of the gate.
That is what almost happened to me with my desire to leave the family business as an insurance agent.
Mhm.
After 12 years, I had been podcasting as a hobby. I had gotten bit by this bug for doing all of this content creation, so much so that I was putting out probably about 7 to 15 podcast episodes a week
Yeah.
as a hobby. As a hobby outside of the day job. And I had an audience at the time of hundreds of thousands of people all over the world. And I'm receiving hundreds of emails every week from people telling me what a difference it was making in their lives. I was making a little bit of money from it. And I began to ask myself in my head only, what would life be like if I could do this for a living instead of
Yes.
selling insurance?
Yes.
And talk about cutting yourself off. I immediately, as soon as that thought came, I was disgusted with myself.
Really?
I felt guilt, I
Mm,
felt
yeah.
shame, I
Yeah.
felt irresponsible and selfish. And
Yeah.
so I must never think that thought again. And certainly I should never let anybody know that that thought had ever crossed my mind because I have more job certainty and security than anybody on this planet. This was
Yep.
2007, just before the big crash. and I'm in an industry where I could see the financial stuff happening and people's layoffs, people I went to college with and people that I went to high school with, layoffs were happening everywhere. And here I am having a dream of going out and doing my hobby for a living
How dare you?
in an industry that nobody hardly ever knows about, and people are predicting podcasting is dead in 2007. It's
Oh my
reached
gosh.
its peak. And
You know,
who am
someone told me that when I was starting my first podcast too.
yeah.
Yeah, well, it's dead. No one's going to be listening to podcasts.
But that's exactly what happened to me is I killed I
Yeah.
my belief system was trying to squash that dream.
Yes.
This is wrong. This
Yes.
is irresponsible.
Yeah.
What would people think of me?
I went
And
the
I
same
would
so
tell
many
you what
times.
though, it just wouldn't die. The dream would not die.
Yeah.
It was it and I finally confessed that I had this dream to my wife, who seemed very supportive of the idea. I then talked to my pastor at the church that I was attending at the time. He's like, "Oh my gosh, Cliff, I totally see you making a living doing that." And then all of a sudden, I started to talk to a handful of other people who didn't know me as well, and they were like, "Yes." And then as soon as I started to get all this other stuff, it's like, wow, people aren't taking this the way that I thought they might take it. I've got a lot of support about this, and I began to speak about it publicly. And well, we know where I am today.
Yeah. You found, thankfully, and I know there's more to the story too, but thankfully you found, you called in people who could support you. We're going to get to this. This is important too. Who could support you in this vision that you were creating. So the first step is just really the vision. And we talked
Yes.
about this. We touched on this a little bit last week. We can be we can be pulled by a vision or pushed by suffering.
Yes.
And it seems to be sort of a combination of things for a while until it isn't. And now you've had, I would imagine, I think it's true for me too. You've had enough experience with creating visions for yourself and living into a vision that has given you, and this is the third part, I don't want to skip too fast, but this is the third part, a confidence to live into these visions. And so have I. I mean, I remember when I left my first corporate job, it was the same thing. How dare I? You're making such great money. You've put so much time and energy. This was, and by the way, this was the post I shared on Substack last week around really kind of having a confusion about and just a normal experience about, quote, what would make us happy. Now, happy is a strange word, but there's only so many words I can write without it turning into a book. Nevertheless, what I was really pointing to there was, this beliefs that come up when we're wanting to explore a different vision. And you just described it perfectly. You're making good money. Why would you leave this family business of insurance? This is a secure thing. And I went through the same thing. I was leaving this career at being a physical therapist. I had worked my way up in the company. As a matter of fact, what I didn't share in that post, I had created the exact position that I wanted in the company. I moved from being a regional manager at the time who was overseeing a lot of operations to become the director of talent development. And I probably did that for 6 months and still at that point, maybe a year, and realized this isn't it. This really wasn't the vision. I was sort of trying to, thread a needle so I didn't have to face into really what was coming, right? Because of fear. We'll get to that. Anyway, those ways that we want to stop the vision. And so I think when we can catch that, and like you said, it wouldn't go away.
Right.
It would not go away. So vision.
Yeah. So and one of the phrases that really captured my heart when I discovered this idea of dreaming,
Mhm.
the fear for me is whatever you do, just don't quit your day job. Right? That's the conditioned way that the world teaches us to stay inside of whatever
Yes.
box we're in.
Yes.
And
Yes.
what I would love to replace that with, if you have some sort of fear, don't quit. Whatever you do, just don't quit your day job. My thing is, whatever you do, even if you keep your day job for however long you keep your day job, whatever you do, don't quit your daydream.
Oh, Cliff, that's a great quote. I'm
Thank
using
you.
that. Yeah. Whatever you do, don't quit your daydream. I think that's brilliant. I mean, that's it. Right.
Yeah.
Because, and this is one of the things too. And I know that you had done a show on this that I listened to, which was brilliant. There is a practical part to this, right? When we're starting our own business or when we're making a move, we can, and I know you and I are huge fans of the book, The Big Leap.
By the
And
way, I'm going to be on a podcast with Gay Hendricks tomorrow.
oh my gosh, can you tell us where we can
Uh,
catch that?
it is it's going to be live streamed on the internet. It's not my stream, but let me just tell you, it is Inspired Money.
Okay.
Just look up inspiredmoney.fm, inspiredmoney.fm. It's Andrew Wang. And if you can find his social media profiles, we'll be streaming live tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern.
That's very exciting. So Gay Hendricks is the author of the book, The Big Leap. And we're big fans of the book, big fans of Gay and Katie Hendricks. And Katie Hendricks was my co-host on my first podcast, the Super Fantastic Leadership Show. You can find that on all of your favorite podcast applications. Anyway, but we're big fans of that book. And there is the idea of taking this leap, right? Making the leap into something else. And there's also, I kind of think of it more of walking across a bridge.
Yes.
This practical part. And you've talked about that on your podcast too, for people who are wanting to leave, quote, their day job, and maybe doing it, I would characterize it as maybe a little too quickly and or without, some practical sort of pieces to it. So there is a practicality that I think is good.
I think so. And I think that the analogy of making the big leap, I think that you can have both. I would imagine if I'm building a bridge towards a destination, and I might build that bridge out and have the construction phase, and I'm from one peak trying to reach the other peak, and I get so far, and finally I've got enough bridge material that
Yes.
I'm not going to finish the bridge. I'm just going to leap over. I can make this jump. And
One
the thing
small
is
step for man.
it's how much of a runway do you have? And so I
Yeah.
like that metaphor.
I like that, the runway. So nevertheless, don't quit your daydream, right? Have the vision, hang on to the vision. And here's what I like to say about vision. If you do not create one for your life, I
Mhm.
promise you there are a million people that will do it for you. Who would be
Matter of
more than
fact,
happy.
if here's the situation, if you were to be asked to write down on a piece of paper, what are 50 things that you want? And you
Yes.
set a timer for 45 minutes. Actually, know what? 50 minutes. Set a timer for 50 minutes and just write down 50 things that you want. If you cannot complete that list, if you cannot get 50 things onto a list of what you desire within 50 minutes, I promise you, you are not living a life according to your vision. Your life is currently a reflection of the vision of the people around you.
Yeah. And that can be a very eye-opening exercise the first time you do it, even the 10th time that you do it.
Absolutely.
I think I'm on like 12 to 15 times of doing it, right? It's very eye-opening. Yes. So exactly, we can take on, which, we cannot dismiss the influence that the things around us, people in our lives, stories, we talked about last week on the show, the ancestral influence that we have, thousands of years old. Those are all very real, relevant things in our life. And the more that we can continue to have the vision and the imagination in our life, will probably serve us to balance some of that out. So
Yeah.
first step, imagination. See it. See what you want. Get clear about what that is.
Without vision, the people will perish.
Exactly. Is that a quote from, where is that?
That's the Bible.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Yeah, I like it. I'm like, where's that from? You're like, just the Bible.
Yeah,
So
it's
yeah, it's just the Bible.
some ancient text.
Yeah, maybe you've heard of it. Step 2, courage. Now, this is what you were talking about. And I want to bring in people into our life. When you talked about this, sort of, not that you were completely dependent on people to create the vision, but you were very fortunate as you started to share this vision with people who loved you, really believed in you. You started to support yourself and having the courage. And I put this in the show notes. In my experience, this is, and I've seen it in my own life, the dividing line for even a modicum of success to having the things that we want in our life or not. And I said success or failure, but success and nothing. To have the courage to even take those steps to move towards that vision, I
Yeah.
think is the second step of this. And the more that we keep taking those steps, then the confidence comes, which we'll talk about third. But having the courage to do that. I remembered when I was making when I was starting to set up my own business, when I was starting to move away from my corporate world, there were those steps, and just having the courage to put myself, and this is the part of choosing yourself, of putting myself out into the world to go, what will happen if I say, hey, I'm available to this? I started getting opportunities to speak in front of groups and getting opportunities to work with teams. And I kept just putting it out there. What does it look like? What would happen if I go do it and I fail miserably? Well, I'm courageous enough to know that I have things to learn, and I'm going to learn along the way, and I will continue to get better. So there's just that step of having the courage. And I think and I'd be curious what your thoughts are here, Cliff, because I think that's probably where people also get stymied,
Yeah.
is just
There
having that courageousness. And it does take a certain level of that, I think.
Well, there are several things that come to my mind as I hear that. First and foremost, the thing is that a lot of people, when they talk about this and they come to me for coaching, they say, "You know what, Cliff? It's so great that you had the confidence to make that decision."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Well, I didn't have the confidence. I had the courage."
Yes.
And this is the key. And I know that I think confidence is probably somewhere in the outline for you for today's topic.
Yeah.
But the idea is that confidence is not required for you to choose yourself.
Yes.
Confidence is not required for you to move forward towards your vision. In
Yes.
fact, you can't get confidence until after you've had the courage to
Exactly.
actually do it in spite of the fear,
Yes.
in
That's
spite of
it.
all the things that could go wrong, in spite of the fact that you may fail many times, fall on your face, fail publicly, and be humiliated in front of others until you have the courage to do that and then find and make it work. Once you've made it work in spite of all that, the confidence then comes. You have earned the confidence. If
Yes.
you are waiting for confidence to choose yourself, to invite yourself, to create whatever vision, if you're waiting for confidence, you will never move.
And that's what I think. And I've heard this, like, just be confident. I just don't believe that comes before a certain vision. And I certainly don't think it comes before courage in my experience, because I was not, and as I've coached people, I'll say, like, protect your confidence once you have it. But the first step is it really is just being courageous to go, okay, I'm going to give this a shot. I have no idea. I was thinking about golfing when I got to the courage part of it. And putting is just like, and I don't know if you golf, but putting is it's just the worst part of my game. There's a lot of pieces to the game. But one thing for sure, when I am not courageous enough to even hit the ball hard enough to get to the hole, I can't tell you how many times I'll have this moment of just fearing not making it or overshooting the hole. And guess what? The ball won't even make it to the hole. So there's no way I'm going to make the shot if the ball won't even get to the hole. You're better off to just overshoot it, right? At least then I know it has half a chance. So I was thinking about this with the courageous part, because the fear comes in of missing the shot. The fear comes in of overshooting it, or being so inaccurate that I'm not going to make it in the hole. Well, if you just back off so much from the shot that it doesn't even get close, then yeah, you're never going to make it.
Well, the
So
important thing here is what is fear? Fear has a very important role in our lives, and we should
yes,
not try to avoid all fear.
agreed.
Fear is a great mechanism that keeps us safe and protects us. It at least tries to do so. And in many situations and contexts, it's completely out of bounds.
Yeah.
It's like it's irrational, if you will. So
Yes.
I like to ask myself, what is the fear of me hitting this club against this ball? What's
Yeah.
the worst that could happen? The worst that could happen, well, it moves an inch when the hole is, 28 inches away,
Yeah.
and I guess I'm supposed to use yards in golf, but anyway, you get the
It
idea.
doesn't matter. Yeah, I do.
And, or what's the second worst? I could overshoot it. What's the third worst thing? I mean, and at the end of the day, if you stack up all of the things that could go wrong, you dying as a result of taking that swing is very far down the list.
Probably.
And that's what the fear is about. And quite
It
frankly,
is.
it's like, no, I'm on television and I'm on the PGA Tour, and there are millions of people or hundreds of thousands of people viewing me right now. I will be humiliated. And you know what? That's your ancestral DNA. that's
Yes.
kicking in. And yes, there was a time when you did something that everybody in your tribe disagreed with. They would excommunicate you or
Yeah,
whatever.
excommunicate you,
There we
yes.
go. They
Kick you
would
out.
put you out. They would kick you out of their community and away from all resources for your daily sustenance. That's your ancestral DNA that's afraid of you being humiliated. The worst thing you could do is whatever picture you create in your mind, how you respond and or
Yes.
react to that humiliating, what you perceive to be a humiliating experience. There are people that fail on television and live sports all the time.
All the time.
And there are people who fail in business all the time. In fact, one of my favorite quotes from so many of the people that I look up to when it comes to success in business and practically every area of life, how did I get to become a success? I have failed more times than you've tried.
Yeah. So good. And this is part of, I think holding this as the game is what makes it so fun, right? Like it's the game. Like, what's the game of feeling humiliated? It's like, oh, that's kind of funny.
Wait,
Especially about a golf swing.
so the second thing that came up for me, so that was the
Yeah,
first
that was
thing
the first one.
confidence is something that's earned, it's not required. Courage is something is what's required to move us forward. The second thing that occurred to me was the fact that I was fortunate that my wife was an encouraging
Yeah.
person. I was
Yes.
fortunate that my pastor that I confided in, uh, and I can tell you not everyone is as fortunate
That's right.
when they talk to their spouse or where they talk to their close mentor and whatever. And you never, I mean, everybody in our lives has their own way of seeing the world and perceiving the world and their own conditioned beliefs about what is right and what is wrong and what is a responsible path versus irresponsible. So there's no way that I can say all you need to do is sit down and have a conversation with your spouse, and you're
Yeah.
going to find that support. Because you know what, it literally is a 50-50 chance. Who knows what your spouse is gonna say, all
Yeah.
right? And
Yes.
so, but it still takes courage to do that, and I will say this, in the event that currently the people that are your close inner circle, your peer group, if you will, if you begin to confide in them about your dreams, and you find that you get it's the metaphor of, is it the crabs inside of the
Yeah.
pot of
Crab pot.
boiling water and they'll
Yes.
pull you back down? If you're in a metaphorical situation where the people you confide in want to keep you into the pot of boiling water instead of crawling out to a more pleasant experience of whatever life is for you, and that may be family, it may be very close religious ties, it may be whatever in your life. I will say this, this is a direct quote from Tony Robbins. The quality of your life is the direct reflection of the expectations of your peer group. So another part of this is, uh, be willing to confide in people, but if all of a sudden you get pushback, you get people who oppose the vision, oppose the dream, whatever you do, don't quit your daydream.
Yes.
But
100%.
inst but instead, make a commitment to upgrade your peer group. Now, I'm not
Yes.
saying dump your spouse and go find one that's more supportive,
Mm.
although that's been done on a
That's been done.
handful of occasions. What I am saying, though, is you can be very intentional about
Yes.
finding people, and you can maintain a healthy, loving, great relationship with a non-supportive spouse of your dream of, let's just say, leaving a day job and going out and starting and becoming self-employed. And there's a way that you could navigate that path, and I've helped a lot of people do that,
Yep.
where you can find success because you upgraded your peer group and people who believed in you. You kept the day job, you kept the secure financial security flowing, which isn't really what the spouse was really concerned about. Is, I'm really, uh, I don't feel good about the insecurity of self-employment. And there are things you can do financially and succeed on the side, to where ultimately the data just proves that actually keeping the day job is the less secure. It is the least responsible option, and you can prove it with numbers, and that
Yes.
might make us sway. But you can't do that until you upgrade your peer group. And just I say, for me, I talked to a handful of people and they were all supportive, and then the flood of support came in. I do understand I was incredibly fortunate
Yes.
And not everybody has that. I will say though, if you find yourself sharing your dream, your vision, and you don't get that kind of support, don't quit your daydream, but intentionally surround yourself and seek out people who will support your dream.
Yes. Who who can be, and I think this is the voice as you're talking, the voice that I would hear when I would share. Well, let me say a few things. I do not believe in sharing your dream with every person in the planet for
Mhm.
that very reason. I think there is a call. I remember somebody telling me like share your goals with everyone. When you set a goal, Sarah, I'm like, I don't think so. And because you do want to know what consciousness you're talking to. And I think this is very important. And I knew when I would share one of my visions or one of my goals with someone, when I suddenly got the sense that, oh, the consciousness I'm talking to here now is the consciousness of fear. Is there anything, you can sort of question like, is there anything of value to take from that? Is there something I really didn't think of? Fair enough. But mostly I could dial into like this is the consciousness of sort of this irrational fear. This is the consciousness of, the fear that says just stay where you're at because that's safer. So being discerning about that. And if it is your spouse, okay, I loved all the things you said about, well, let's just kind of let's get some data together. Let's really talk through this. Let's set up some of the security there. It makes total sense to me. And when it comes to our friends and our peer group, that intentionality really matters because visions and new imaginations, they remind me of like a little sapling tree wanting to grow in the forest, and they are easily trampled on. Right? They need a chance to root. They need a chance to really start to take, to blossom into something. And so all the more reason to just be very intentional about who we're sharing that with, because that courage that it takes to keep growing that, to keep nurturing that needs to be supported too. It requires sunlight. And if that courage that you're trying to support is starting to get rained on and starting to get it's nothing but storms around it, it's very difficult to have that grow and to have the tree to turn into a tree, to be strong, to have the roots grounded. And we'll get to the roots in a second. I'm going to use a tree metaphor now, I guess. That's what we're
I
doing.
like it.
Yeah. So I think it is very important. And so when you brought that up around the courage side of it, we want to have that fostered and nurtured by the people who, we can trust. And Cliff, I know you had an experience at one point, and so did I. But I know you had an experience where you had a new vision that you were bringing forth and you were being told by everyone, don't switch your business.
Oh yeah.
Don't stop teaching podcasting. Don't stop. And I think it's valuable to share that too.
Yeah, so it was a peer group of mine who I respected very highly, and this is a group of 6 of us that met together every single week. One person was absent from the meeting, so there were 4 other people on the call, and I said, "I think I'm ready to completely leave the world of podcasting, and I'm gonna shut down all of my products and services, every stream of income related to podcast coaching and consulting, and I'm going to go all in on business strategy and mindset."
Okay.
And the whole consensus of the entire group was that is a very bad idea. You definitely
Horrible.
you should hold on to those streams of income, hire a group of people to answer technical support questions. You can even create content just once a month to keep the pipe flowing and all this other stuff. But whatever you do, don't do this. This is terrible, Cliff. You have to hold on to this stream of income. And I'm like, by the way, for about a week, I kind of lived into, okay, what does life look like over the next 12 to 18 months? And I'm like, not worth living. And that's what I mean,
And they're like,
not,
that's okay. Just keep doing what you're doing.
I I don't mean that literally, but it's just like there was
Well,
no energy
yeah.
for me in it. There was
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
my heart would not be in it. I couldn't get myself excited to
Yes.
keep that. I didn't want to hire a team. I didn't want to oversee support ticket people yes, the money would be there, but the money isn't what's calling me this over here. And I believe that the money over here can support this. And I've actually already tested the waters. And it's like, Cliff, but that's great. You've tested the waters. You got money. But imagine all the money you're leaving. And I'm like, but it will flow somewhere else is my thought. And they're like, Cliff, come on. This is
And there was
not a
no proof, and there was no proof that it wouldn't.
Yeah.
That's the interesting part of this. The counterfactual wasn't there either. There was no proof that the money wouldn't come to you. It was simply a belief. If
So
you switch this, you're going to lose that. And you're like, you don't know that.
Yep.
Yeah.
There is another quote from that ancient wisdom text called the Bible.
Yeah.
And it says this in Proverbs: plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors, they succeed. And I will tell you that I took my plans, my ideas to this group, and I did seek counsel.
Mhm.
The advisors told me that I was making a major mistake. And as a result of going to them, my plans succeeded. How is that?
Interesting.
It's interesting that this text does not say plans fail because you lack following the advice of your many advisors. No, plans fail because you lack the advisors. Plans fail because you don't seek advice. You don't get feedback. You don't get people who have a different perspective and see things from viewpoints and the whole idea. Plans fail for lack of advisors, or lack of counsel, but with many advisors they succeed. When you bring many advisors, people can see your blind spots. And I will say this:
Yes, absolutely.
those people did point out things that I was not considering.
Yep.
But I was still committed to the vision. I was still committed to the plan of dropping all of this other stuff. But my plans modified and shifted a little bit to make up for some of the things that were in my blind spot that I had not thought of.
Yeah. And that's the beauty of asking the question. Okay, here's my vision. Don't tell me how the vision can't be possible. Not interested in that. I am interested in what you would think all the pieces I might want to consider to bring this vision forth.
Yeah.
Tell me all the things you would think about. I mean, that's the benefit of supportive advisors and supportive people in your life who can potentially help you see your blind spots.
Right. And I
Yeah.
do want to emphasize that it's okay for people to point out why they think it might fail.
Sure.
What are some of the drawbacks?
Yeah. Which I think is helpful.
Yeah. Very
just in the-
helpful.
I think it's very helpful. Just in the post that I shared last week, I gave this example of getting this promotion that I thought I really wanted. Well, I think and I'm just saying this now, I don't know if it's true, but I think that had I asked 2 or 3 people, like, hey, that had functioned at that level before, or who had been in an executive role like that, like, what do you like about this? What were the things that you didn't realize when you got into this role that were real sort of like, oh man, had I only known this before, I might have reconsidered. Or what are the things I should be aware of? One was like, you're going to work an inordinate number of hours. So I think those things can be those conversations can be very helpful when we're embarking on something. And I'm a huge fan of people seeing our blind spots or giving us those pieces of input for sure.
Yeah. So we have covered the fact that we need to have a vision. We need to imagine. We need to be able to free our dream, if you will, of the future.
Yes.
We need to have courage. What else is involved?
This is where confidence comes in. And this is going to be kind of strange because we've just made it clear that confidence is born from some level of courage. Okay. So we take a step, we're not tipping over as we're learning to walk, right? We take a step and like, oh, I'm still upright. Okay, take another step. Okay. Now we start to get confidence that, we might still be teetering, but we're still walking. We're moving forward on our vision. Okay. There's another part of confidence though that I think is really important. And it's this idea that people are simply anointed into these roles. For example, let's use the public speaking one. I really like that as an example. That somehow somebody just chose you to be a public speaker.
Yeah.
And they anointed you to be the speaker. And that it's dismissed that you actually just said, this is just what I'm going to do. And you put your own hand up.
Yeah.
Right? This is the whole essence of choosing yourself, really. And so I think that's the misunderstanding around confidence that I think is so important for people to understand, that it's a misunderstanding about how the world works, and a misunderstanding that There are not spots just reserved for people and you're anointed into them.
This is something that I hear quite a bit.
Yeah.
When I'm coaching people, there are people who are hiring me to help them on their entrepreneurial journey,
Yep.
and they know that I'm friends and with some of my peers who, in their mind, are have achieved way more success than I have. So they'll
Yes.
mention people like Amy Porterfield, Michael Hyatt, and Pat Flynn, and other names.
Yes.
And so what they'll say is, Cliff, I want to be able to do things like them,
Mhm.
insert whatever name here, but I'm just not them. I don't have their clout. I don't have their network. I don't have their
Right.
credibility. I don't have their and the first is like
Like, wait, like they all just woke up with it.
neither did they.
Exactly.
Neither did they. They didn't
Exactly.
have their audience at one point. They
Yes.
didn't have their network of people. They didn't have all of the content in the archives to add to their credibility. There
Yes.
was a time they didn't have it, but they chose themselves. They invited themselves. They anointed themselves. They actually went to the printer and said, "Excuse me, I have a design. It's just like what got in school when I had permission slips. So
Yeah.
so I had these print. I would like you to print me a stack of permission slips. And so you go to the printer. Now you've got you just permission slip. I give Cliff Ravenscraft permission to be a keynote speaker and a paid speaker. All right.
Yes.
Date it here, sign, boom. Here's my permission slip. I gave myself permission to be a keynote speaker. I gave myself permission to be a paid speaker. That's where my permission came from. I chose it myself.
Exactly. That's it. No one's ordained to do anything. I mean, I guess unless you're actually ordained, but no one, these, the people that you just mentioned or anyone doing anything in life. I think there's two parts to this, but I call it sort of internalized feudalism. Like it would imply that your efforts would be completely futile to accomplish anything in your life. Your efforts would be futile to live a vision of your life.
Yeah.
And that's the misunderstanding. And I think that's the nuance of confidence, that to understand that no one has been anointed, ordained, chosen in any way, that they have all, and this is the part that I wanted to mention too. In most instances, these people have worked many, many, many hours.
Well, that's the other thing. So a lot of people say, Cliff, it's like I would love to be able to. I want to actually follow in your footsteps. I want to be able to do what you do. The only
Mhm.
thing is I don't have your audience. I don't have your mailing list. I don't have all the
Yeah.
content that you've created over the years. And I'm like, well, guess what? You should start doing if you want to follow. Start hitting the record and publish buttons.
Yeah. Start
Get
doing it.
started. The
Yeah.
best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is right now.
That's so good.
Get started.
Yeah, get started. Why wait? I had someone reach out to me one time too. I want to do exactly the work that you're doing. I'm like, that's great. It's taken me 22 years.
Yep.
And this is the other side of this, is like, and if you, what else are you going to do with the next 20 years of your life? If this is your vision, why not? Why not now?
Now there is something that I want to say here, and it's a slightly different topic than choose yourself, but this comes up a lot in conversation. The reality is, sure, it's taken me 20 years to get where I am in the world that I currently live and swim in all this other stuff. And sure, there are people who would love to be where I am today at this level of influence and credibility and
Yeah.
and all this other stuff. And what I will tell you is, while it took me 20 years to get here, I don't think it has to take you 20 years.
Sure, of
Here's
course.
here's the key though. I'm not going to be able to teach you how to get it in 9 months or even 12 months or 18 months. But what I can help you do, more than likely, no guarantee, because we're all different, all on different paths, and we all have different things that we're working with. However, what I can say is, if this is a path that is for you and your heart is in it and your commitment and you're resilient and you're going to make this happen no matter what took me what took me the first 5 years to do, I could probably save you several months
Yes.
and or a
100%.
year or two, or maybe even potentially a decade of trial and error. I can help you skip a lot of that.
Yeah.
Although not everything that has worked for me is automatically going to be plug and play for you. So there's still going to be some growth. I can just help you maybe cut a quarter of the trial and error out, or
Yeah, and
potentially more.
exactly. And I'll get to this other nuance around confidence here in a second too, which involves luck,
Yeah.
which we dismiss reliably in our life. The luck of the right technology at the right time in the right place. And, we'll talk about that in a second. But yes, you can absolutely learn from people who have walked a path before you. Right. And they can cut down your learning curve exponentially, which is why I think we seek trusted advisors, why we seek people who can show us our blind spots or open us up to different things that we weren't aware of. Right. Or say, okay, look, knowing what I know now, this might be some things I would consider. Right. This might be if you ask for a raise or you ask for the promotion and your boss tells you no, and you're very committed to that next role, you may want to consider leaving that current job and going elsewhere. You
Yeah.
may want to consider what the other growth opportunities are for you. Now, if your security is more important, then okay. But I would continue to not quit your daydream. Right. So, yes, I mean, all those things. Well, and then I want to talk about this because I think it's very important. The role that luck can play in us having our vision and being very cognizant of that, because I think this is not being aware of that is what feeds into this feudalism that we can have and can start to kill our confidence. That sometimes, and this is just the game, that sometimes the roll of the dice doesn't always turn out the way that we think. And so can we be really flexible to roll again? Right. To understand that we don't always control all the things that are happening. So I think when I look at the skill that I brought to things in my life, the commitment that I brought to them, the desire to live that vision, the trusted advisors that I had, and then I really consider how the universe was conspiring to support me, how all of these different things had to line up perfectly. I mean, that was not all me. It's just impossible that was all me, right? The me, the ego, my identity doing all that, and how much luck was involved at different times too. And so I think we have to be cognizant of that and keep rolling the dice, keep going.
Yeah, and I'm a huge believer in luck, and part of me, I believe a lot of this is just belief.
Yeah.
But for me, I believe that I am divinely guided by a universal plan, and there's I just follow my energy, I follow my flow, I follow my inspiration, and some things that I'm absolutely convinced are gonna work don't work, and then I'm like, you know what, I'm just gonna go play with this thing, and then the next thing you know, I stumble across podcasting and takes me down a journey, and I have a sneaking suspicion, Daphne, that amateur radio might just be a catalyst for a new season of Cliff Ravenscraft's journey in this world.
Yeah, it's wild, right? So for those of you who may not know, Cliff received his certification. And is it in a certification in amateur? What is it exactly?
You have to be licensed to operate on certain amateur radio frequencies.
Okay.
And so I got my official copy of my technician amateur class or amateur radio license. And this is something that I'd wanted since I was 17 years old, but never to the point where I'm going to put in the effort to study it.
Yeah.
But recently I had a burning desire to finally move forward on that. I started hanging around a bunch of other people who were interested in it. Got a couple of radios. And when I say a couple, I mean like 7.
There they are now.
And I'm sitting here playing around with it's like and then I'm really starting to start having conversations with people on the radio through a service called GMRS which doesn't require licenses, and many of those people are actually also amateur radio licensed people, and so they're like talking about all the other ways that I could communicate with them but I'm limited to just this, and I'm like, well, that's not good enough. Now I want to get my license so that I can actually have access to all these other forms of communication, because I like to communicate with people. I don't know if you knew this, Daphne.
Yeah, I'm slightly aware.
And then I'm like, okay, so now I'm going to study this. And by the way, 423 possible questions are in the pool for this course or for this test. and they randomly select 35 questions out of the 423. I devoted 10 hours and memorized all 423 questions and their answers.
Yep.
And I went in and got 100% on my test. I was like, let's do this.
Let's do it. So
Nothing was going to stop me.
yeah. And what I love about that, and you told me I know nothing about this, so I'm very fascinated by the whole thing. You may notice that I like also communicating with people. And I was fascinated by it. I know nothing about it. And you don't know where it's an interest that you have. You don't know exactly where it's going to lead. You may have a little bit of an idea. You know that you love talking. You know that you enjoy communicating with people. You enjoy solving. By the way, I want to really put a foundation on this. You enjoy solving problems for people, right? One of the problems you started hearing in all the teaching and all the instructing you were doing was this belief, these limiting belief issue, right? I call it a problem. Like, how can I help people solve that?
Yep.
Right. And that is where I live. How can I help people solve this problem of really having this discernment around what is a great life for them? How can I help solve that problem to have all this opportunity, but understand how to make those decisions, how to navigate these crazy waters in which we swim in this modern world, right? Interestingly enough, a lot of the problems that we think are problems were problems thousands of years ago. Anyway, modern world or not. But yeah, and so now you get this broadcasting radio certification, and you're continuing to follow that lead. And we don't know we don't know how it's always going to turn out. And there's a little bit of luck involved in that too.
Yep.
Right? Where it's going to lead, what it's going to do.
And let me just tell you, the luck is already flowing. The luck is already, it just shows up.
It just does. It just does.
I launched a podcast, by the way, notesonradio.com. It's Cliff's Notes on Amateur Radio. There's already 2 podcast episodes, and I just launched it 2 days ago.
Yes.
Notesonradio.com. And I published about this on Facebook, and then all of a sudden, the daughter of Bob Heil reached out to me and says, "Oh my gosh, we've got to talk. Did you know we have an entire division of Heil Sound for amateur radio? We're scheduled to talk at 1 p.m. today."
Oh my gosh.
I'm going to see if I might land a potential sponsor for my podcast right out of the gate.
That's amazing.
And I was sitting there. I've been watching TikTok. There's all these people who cover ham radios. And there's this one guy, he does a channel and it's called On the Trail Radio, right?
Yeah.
So I'm loving it. And I end up following him. And I didn't even realize that I actually chose to follow him on TikTok. I'm sitting in the driveway on my car, calling out on GMRS. This is WKRM 588, listening in. And then all of a sudden, I talk to this guy, Toby, I think is his name. I apologize if I get it wrong. But anyway, I talked to him and he says, yeah, I'm walking through Spring Grove Cemetery here in Cincinnati, which is about 15 to 20 miles away, on a handheld device. And it turns out, he said, yeah, I'm testing out a brand new radio from Baofeng. They sent it to me, blah, blah, blah. How's this sound? And then he says, I'm on TikTok if you want. And I'm like, no way. It's like, I just discovered your content. And so now I'm sitting here, and this is a guy who already has relationships with all of the manufacturers who are shipping him free radios to cover.
Yeah.
Hello, sign me up with your people.
And you planned this all out.
Of course,
Every
it was all
move,
planned.
All of this was planned. All of this was... That's it. I mean, it's such a great example of like, I followed this. I don't exactly know.
Yeah, let me give you the formula. Decide what you want. Go sit in your driveway, key up, and wait for people to come. Just hit the mic, and people will come.
Just do it.
Is that luck? From one perspective, that's luck. For another perspective, it is the law of attraction at play. There's all sorts of ways to look at it.
I think so too. And I think that, yes, there are. And I think the take home point is that you followed your interest. You had a vision for this thing that you'd wanted to do since you were 17 years old. You've done it. It's just like me becoming a professional drummer. I didn't know. I mean, I did what I did. I've played the drums for a long time. I went through the certification at Berklee because I thought that would be fun. And also I would learn a lot, which I did. A lot about music and a lot about myself, which was wonderful. And, getting paid to play music. Great. But I didn't really know all the pieces. The harpist in Oklahoma City that I would meet, the other musicians that I've met, it just you can't map it all out perfectly.
Yeah.
And there is some, we can call it luck, we can call it attraction, we can call it following what we're interested in. But when we come back to having the vision, the courage, being able to recognize that there is no one that is specifically ordained in a certain way or anointed in a certain way that we can put our hand up. And this is sort of how I see it. Like, I'm not exceptional and neither is anyone else. You follow what you're interested in and you keep building that, and you will build the skills. I'm sure there are a ton of skills that need to go into,
Oh,
this
yeah.
radio
Oh,
thing,
yeah.
right?
That's one of the
So,
things that really interests me about any of my pursuits.
yeah.
It's what I don't know that I could learn.
Yes, me too. And I would say if there's any thread in my life, it is that I love learning
Right.
about just about anything, which can
Just
be
about anything.
yeah, it can be almost a little dangerous too. There has to be, I've had to really pull in some of those things to keep myself on track. But nevertheless, I do love learning.
Yeah.
And so when I do get really interested in something, I go all in. I have no issue learning about it and spending time learning about it and becoming skillful. So skill and luck plays a part in all of this. And I think it's important to recognize that. And I think in the spirit of confidence, the reason that I like recognizing that is that if we attribute it, if we tribute, if we attribute all of our success to a simple identity, and you were sort of talking about this and you were sort of pointing to this when you talked about people sort of thinking that their day job was the most secure. If we attribute it all to identity and a role, I think that's where it gets really dicey because things don't always go our way. And so if I attribute it all to myself, I'm going to get flattened pretty quickly and start to see myself as a failure, which is not helpful.
Yeah.
When I recognize that there's a little luck involved, I become much less of a snob around my own sort of what could seem like a failure. And by the way, other people's. And I think when we've watched sort of, you mentioned in sports, when we watch sort of the way that we can have this, there's a German word for it, Schadenfreude, sort of this weird experience we can have of watching other people fail. That's really what's starting to happen because we think that failure is all of their own. It's personal.
Yeah.
It's because of something they did, and that just isn't my experience, and it just isn't how I show up.
You bring that up. One of the things that drove me to recognize and have such expectation that I would have a large following as I left my career as an insurance agent, because
Yeah.
I had a firm belief at the time, and I think I might still. I haven't. I'm going to say it out loud and see
Okay.
where my gut feels when I say these words. But there's a number of people out there who absolutely are attracted to and love either a great success story or a train wreck.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
what I was going to give them was the uncertainty of my journey. Cliff Ravenscraft, is he going to be an ultimate underdog who achieves great success, or Cliff Ravenscraft is going to be one of the biggest train wrecks
Yeah.
that you could possibly imagine, and he's going to be public about it all. And I've been stringing people's interest about what that's going to look like since 2008.
Yeah. So far, success. So,
With sprinkled in a lot of failure and train wrecks.
yeah, right.
I bring a little bit for everyone.
It's a little bit. You can enjoy it all, which
Enjoy
would
it
be
all.
probably true of all of our lives if we looked closely enough.
Of course.
Exactly. Exactly. So, I just love this topic. Choose yourself, right? Have the vision, have the courage to take the steps. And there's not just one step, by the way, multiple steps. And then the confidence and recognize what we mean by confidence. It isn't just this inflated sense of self, right? What we're really talking about with confidence is understanding really how the world works here, that you're going to put yourself forth. You're actually taking these steps, that no one is anointed into anything, and that the top spots are not reserved for any one person, that there's skill, there's luck involved, and you'll continue to take those steps to actually create the life that you want.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
choose
and the
yourself.
word that I would use on that nuanced kind of confidence is a hopeful, not even hopeful, an expectation that I will make my way in this space.
Yeah.
It's an
Yes. It's an
expectation.
expectation.
And also an expectation that I am going into this with I don't know what I don't know, And there will be many what appear to be and perceived as failed attempts along the way.
Yes. Yes. There
But
will be.
the expectation is that I will find my way. And if I'm very fortunate, some people who have succeeded will be able to come along and be my trusted advisor.
100%. I couldn't have said it better as a summary. I love it.
Daphne, what's your call to action?
My call to action, I'm continuing to write on Substack, really around these transformational topics. What I consider transformational topics. How do we have the discernment around, and primarily as it pertains to the lens of work? How do we relate to this idea of work in the world, especially for people who are working in organizations, working for someone else? It comes with its own set of challenges and nuances. And how do we build the careers that we want, build the life that we want? So every other week on Substack, I'm writing on that topic. Longer form posts, 5,000 words, probably upwards of that, and really investigating these topics, these philosophies, bringing in a lot of the stuff we talk about on the show. So I would love if people would find value in that. If they find value in those, and join me over on Substack at DS Leadership Life. It really supports my continued writing in the world, and I'm very committed to that for now and doing our show here. So join me there.
Excellent. And my call to action is for anyone who is on the entrepreneurial journey, whether you still have the day job, but the daydream just won't quit.
I love it so much.
If you have already made the big leap into your own full-time self-employed journey, or you're anywhere down the line, I am here as a business strategist, mindset coach, trusted advisor for you. I have lots of different ways we could work together. Just reach out to me. The best way, just go to your email client, type in to the to field, cliff@cliffravenscraft.com, and just introduce yourself. Tell me what's going on. What's the thing that excites you and or scares you the most? And let's start a conversation.
Love it. All right. Well, let's wrap up this episode.
All right. Well, until next time, Daphne and I encourage you to choose yourself.